In the mid-2000s, Volkswagen is riding high. Across Europe and beyond, the company is seen as the gold standard of German engineering, precise, reliable, and unstoppable. Its cars are not just vehicles. They are national pride on four wheels. The Beetle made history, the Golf defined generations, and the Passat became the symbol of quiet middle-class success. But as the new century unfolds, the winds are shifting. The world is starting to care about the air it breathes. Governments introduce stricter emissions rules. Environmental groups begin to measure the dark clouds coming out of diesel exhausts. Europe, where diesel has always been king, insists that modern technology can make it clean. And inside Volkswagen, a bold idea takes root. Why not build a diesel that performs like a sports car and pollutes like a hybrid? It sounds impossible. But Volkswagen's leaders are convinced they can pull it off. The United States, with its tough environmental laws and lucrative market, becomes the ultimate target. The company wants to win over American drivers who love performance, but distrust diesel. To do that, Volkswagen needs a miracle, an engine that satisfies regulators, delights drivers, and costs less to produce than any hybrid or electric system. The engineers in Wolfsburg and at the subsidiary Audi call it the EA189 project, a new generation of diesel engines featuring cutting-edge, direct injection and advanced turbocharging. On the test bench, it looks promising. But as development drags on, problems appear. Meeting the strict U.S. nitrogen oxide limits without expensive urea injection systems proves far harder than expected. The prototypes run clean in the lab but dirty in the real world. Deadlines tighten. Volkswagen has already announced launch dates. Marketing campaigns are ready. Executives demand results. Inside the engineering department, pressure becomes unbearable. Some teams begin to explore alternative calibration strategies, subtle tweaks to the software that controls the engine's emission systems. Then quietly, someone crosses a line. A small group of software engineers develops a function that recognizes when the car is being tested in a laboratory. During those short, predictable test cycles, the engine runs in a special mode. Lower power, lower emissions, compliant with every regulation. But once the car returns to the open road, the software switches back. Power comes alive, torque surges, and emissions skyrocket up to 40 times the legal limit. It's ingenious, invisible, and deeply illegal. When the system is demonstrated to senior managers, there's hesitation, then relief. The results look perfect on paper. Regulators see clean numbers. Engineers keep their deadlines, and executives keep their bonuses. In a culture built on precision and hierarchy, no one wants to ask uncomfortable questions. The defeat device, as it will later be called, is quietly approved. By 2008, Volkswagen begins its grand campaign. Slick television ads show families driving through mountain air while cheerful narrators talk about clean diesel technology. The cars deliver strong acceleration and great fuel economy, earning rave reviews. Awards pile up. In America, Jetta TDIs and Passat TDIs become cult favorites among enthusiasts who want performance without guilt. Inside Wolfsburg, the mood is euphoric. The board hails the diesel program as proof that German engineering can do the impossible. Sales rise, profits surge, and CEO Martin Winterkorn is praised as a visionary. What almost no one outside the company knows is that the success story is built on software, designed to deceive. The deception spreads beyond Volkswagen's own lineup. Audi and Porsche adopt versions of the same engine family. By 2014, more than 11 million vehicles worldwide carry the hidden code. Every emission test passed, every award earned, every eco-friendly sticker on a showroom window, all built on a lie. But the truth has a way of catching up. In a small research lab at West Virginia University, a group of academics begins testing diesel cars on real roads, using portable emissions measurement equipment. They're not trying to expose a scandal. They just want data. Yet the numbers they record don't make sense. Volkswagen's diesels pollute far more on highways than they do in labs. Not a little more, but dozens of times higher. When they publish their findings, the first cracks appear in Volkswagen's perfect image. Regulators at the California Air Resources Board take notice. Emails begin to circulate inside. VW engineers whisper that the secret may finally be out. Still, executives hope it can be contained. They underestimate what's coming. By 2010, the illusion is complete. Volkswagen's clean diesel cars are everywhere. In showrooms, driveways, and glossy magazine ads. Jettas, Passats, Audis, and Golfs proudly wear the TDI badge. The company's marketing calls them green performance, and consumers believe it. Reviewers praise the cars for their punchy torque, quiet ride, and low emissions. Environmental groups even give awards. Inside Volkswagen, the numbers are spectacular. Record profits, record sales, and an American comeback that once seemed impossible. But behind closed doors, the engineers who designed the EA189 diesel know the truth. They've tried to warn management that the software is a ticking time bomb. A few have suggested quietly phasing it out or introducing real emission control hardware. Their warnings go nowhere. Volkswagen's corporate culture, built on hierarchy and fear, discourages dissent. Questions are brushed aside. The company's motto is simple: deliver results, no excuses. As the years pass, the deception spreads further. More engines, more models, more regions. What began as a desperate workaround for the American market becomes a global strategy. The defeat device is refined and hidden deeper inside the engine control code, invisible to regulators. Even when internal auditors raise red flags, the answers are carefully worded. Technical anomalies, calibration discrepancies. Meanwhile, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board start noticing inconsistencies. Some Volkswagens pass emissions tests perfectly in labs but emit clouds of nitrogen oxides on the road. Still, without proof, investigators can't act. The numbers are puzzling. But the idea that a global automaker could deliberately cheat seems unthinkable. Then, in 2013, a small research group at West Virginia University, working with the International Council on Clean Transportation, begins testing diesel cars using portable emissions equipment. The goal is simple: to validate lab results in real-world driving. They choose 3 cars: a Volkswagen Jetta, a Volkswagen Passat, and a BMW X5. The BMW performs within limits. The Volkswagens do not. On highways and city streets, their nitrogen oxide emissions are not just higher, they are astronomical. 30 times the legal limit, sometimes 40. The researchers think their instruments are broken. They check, recalibrate, test again. The results are identical. Something is very wrong. The report reaches CARB in California, and quietly the investigation begins. Engineers from the agency contact Volkswagen for an explanation. The company replies with confidence, blaming technical errors, altitude, or test conditions. They send teams of lawyers and specialists to meetings, insisting there's no wrongdoing. But each test CARB runs tells the same story. On the road, the engines pollute massively. Behind the scenes, panic spreads inside Volkswagen. Emails fly between departments. Engineers scramble to rewrite parts of the software, hoping to convince regulators the issue is minor. One internal memo describes the emissions irregularities as inexplicable behavior. Another suggests issuing a voluntary recall to mask the real problem. Still, the heart of the lie, the defeat device, remains untouched. By mid-2015, CARB refuses to back down. They demand proof, and Volkswagen runs out of excuses. In July 2015, senior engineers and executives gather in Wolfsburg for a meeting that will decide the company's future. The evidence is overwhelming. The Americans have found the switch. They know the code changes between lab and road. Someone must tell the truth. When the confession finally comes, it's almost casual. Volkswagen admits that certain diesel engines contain irregular software designed to manage emissions differently during testing. The words are chosen carefully, but the meaning is clear. After nearly a decade of deception, the company has been caught. Within weeks, the story explodes. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issues a notice of violation on September 18, 2015. Headlines: Around the world scream Volkswagen. Cheated. Stocks plunge. Customers feel betrayed. The company that built its reputation on integrity and precision has been exposed as a fraud. Inside Volkswagen's headquarters, shock turns to chaos. Public statements are drafted and rewritten hourly. Executives deny knowing the full extent. Engineers fear criminal charges. The scandal, once contained in code, now spans continents. And as the world demands answers, the question grows louder: how could one of the most respected car makers on Earth build its success on a lie? The confession that surfaces in September 2015 sends shockwaves across the globe. What began as a quiet regulatory dispute explodes into one of the biggest corporate scandals in modern history. For years, Volkswagen had been celebrated as the symbol of honesty, precision, and German discipline. Now, overnight, it becomes a symbol of deception. Within hours of the EPA's public notice, Volkswagen's stock price collapses. In 2 days, the company loses more than $30 billion in market value. News anchors describe it as the diesel apocalypse. Showrooms fall silent. Dealers are flooded with calls from angry customers demanding answers. The brand that once stood for reliability is suddenly synonymous with fraud. Inside the glass towers of Wolfsburg, panic turns into crisis management. Executives huddle in emergency meetings. Lawyers from every continent dial in. The board knows this is no isolated issue. It's systemic. The same software sits in millions of vehicles across the world. The company issues a vague statement blaming discrepancies in emission software, but the truth is too big to hide. The following week, Volkswagen CEO Martin Winterkorn appears before cameras. His face is pale, his voice steady but strained. "I am deeply sorry," he says. "We have broken the trust of our customers and the public." Days later, he resigns, claiming ignorance of the cheating but accepting responsibility. As head of the company, it is the fall of a titan. A man once considered untouchable, now leaving under a cloud of disgrace. Investigations multiply overnight. The U.S. Department of Justice launches a criminal inquiry. German prosecutors raid Volkswagen's headquarters. The European Union demands explanations. The FBI joins in, and soon, executives find themselves under scrutiny not just for negligence, but for conspiracy. Emails, memos, and meeting notes begin to leak. The picture that emerges is one of arrogance and fear. Engineers knew the emission systems could not meet U.S. standards without costly changes. Executives demanded results anyway. The defeat device was not an accident. It was a decision, made and remade over years, buried under layers of corporate silence. The scandal grows even darker when regulators discover that other automakers, Audi, Porsche, and even some non-German brands, may have used similar optimization software. The entire diesel industry is suddenly under suspicion. Diesel, once hailed as the fuel of the future, is now seen as a dirty secret. Cities talk about banning diesel cars altogether. Governments that once offered tax incentives for diesel ownership now turn against it. Volkswagen's internal investigators begin an exhaustive review, interviewing thousands of employees and sifting through millions of documents. The findings are devastating. The cheat affected 11 million cars worldwide, from compact Golfs to luxury Audis. The cost of recalls, lawsuits, and settlements climbs into the tens of billions. For the first time in its history, Volkswagen's survival seems uncertain. The United States takes the lead in punishment. In 2017, Volkswagen agrees to pay more than $25 billion in fines, settlements, and vehicle buybacks. The company pleads guilty to criminal charges of fraud and obstruction of justice. Several executives are arrested. One senior engineer, James Liang, admits to helping design the defeat device and cooperates with investigators. Another executive, Oliver Schmidt, is sentenced to 7 years in U.S. prison for his role in covering it up. As more evidence comes to light, the scandal becomes less about technology and more about psychology, about how a company built on pride could deceive itself so completely. Former employees describe a culture of fear where failure was forbidden, where deadlines were absolute, and where engineers were told to make the impossible work, no matter the cost. In that pressure cooker, ethics became negotiable. Volkswagen's board orders a massive cleanup. New leadership takes over. The brand that once boasted clean diesel now has to rebuild from ashes. In Germany, the public feels betrayed. "If even Volkswagen cheats," one headline reads, "who can we trust?" The scandal becomes a national wound, a humiliation for a country that built its identity on engineering perfection. Around the world, regulators rewrite the rules. Testing procedures change. Cars must now be tested in real driving conditions, not just in labs. Diesel engines lose their status as the eco-friendly choice. The entire industry begins a slow pivot toward electric power, a shift that will redefine the next century of mobility. And as the lawsuits continue, one question hangs in the air. How could this happen for so long without anyone stopping it? The answer is both simple and terrifying, because for a decade the lie worked. When the smoke clears, Volkswagen faces a reckoning unlike anything the auto industry has ever seen. The company that once dreamed of global domination now fights for survival. The numbers are staggering, and tens of billions in fines, millions of recalled vehicles, criminal convictions, and an image shattered beyond recognition. Dieselgate isn't just a scandal. It's a turning point in modern corporate history. Inside Wolfsburg, the halls that once echoed with confidence now hum with silence and shame. Engineers walk past journalists and protesters outside the factory gates. Executives retreat into meetings with lawyers and investigators. The world wants answers, and Volkswagen has few to give. But beneath the weight of disgrace, a new vision begins to form. Volkswagen realizes that it can never rebuild its reputation by defending diesel. The future has to be different, cleaner, simpler, transparent. For a company built on combustion, that means revolution. In 2016, Volkswagen announces its plan for redemption, a massive investment in electric mobility. The program is called Together Strategy. 2025, billions are poured into research and battery development. The same factories that once built the deceitful diesel engines are retooled for electric platforms. The ID series is born, cars that promise zero emissions and total honesty. It is both a technological and moral reboot. Skeptics call it a marketing stunt. But as years pass, the company begins to change from within. Hundreds of engineers who once tuned combustion engines now design battery systems and software. Volkswagen becomes one of the world's largest investors in renewable energy. The same brand that once faked clean power is now racing to create it. Yet the scars remain. Court cases stretch into the 2020s. Former executives, including Martin Winterkorn, face charges in Germany. Thousands of customers file lawsuits across Europe and North America. Volkswagen continues to pay, not just in money but in trust. The name Dieselgate enters the dictionary as shorthand for corporate deceit. The scandal also ripples across the entire industry. Regulators around the world rewrite their testing procedures, using real-world driving conditions to stop future cheating. Other car makers quietly admit to using defeat strategies of their own, though not as extreme. Diesel engines, once the symbol of European efficiency, begin to disappear from catalogs. Cities like Paris and London announce bans. What started as Volkswagen's lie becomes Diesel's downfall. But from that downfall comes transformation. The humiliation forces the industry to accelerate toward a cleaner future. Electric vehicles that once seemed distant now become urgent. Governments fund charging networks. Competitors like Tesla gain legitimacy. Volkswagen's punishment becomes the catalyst for change. Inside the company, a new generation of engineers tries to rebuild what was lost. They speak openly about ethics, about accountability, about never letting ambition outweigh responsibility again. Volkswagen launches transparency programs and sustainability pledges, not to erase the past, but to ensure it's never repeated. The irony is profound. Without Dieselgate, Volkswagen might never have embraced electrification so completely. The scandal that nearly destroyed it becomes the fire that forges its rebirth. Still, the question lingers. Can a company that lied for a decade ever truly regain trust? Some say no. Others point to the progress, the technology, the humility that now drives its mission. Perhaps redemption, like combustion, needs both pressure and ignition. Today, years after the confession that stunned the world, the roads are quieter. Diesel cars fade into memory, replaced by humming electric motors and promises of zero emissions. But somewhere in that silence lies a warning. Because Dieselgate was never just about software or exhaust. It was about human nature, about pride, pressure, and the belief that winning matters more than truth. It showed that even giants can fall, and that progress without ethics is no progress at all. The story of Dieselgate doesn't end with punishment. It ends with perspective. The scandal forced the world to ask harder questions about the technology we trust and the corporations we worship. And in doing so, it revealed something timeless. That transparency is not a feature. It's a responsibility. Volkswagen's future will be electric, clean, and carefully measured. But the shadow of Dieselgate will always follow it, a silent reminder that behind every innovation lies a choice. Between deception and integrity, between ambition and honesty, between what's easy and what's right.